Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Just like we are doing our series on Upadeśāmṛta, we will also start our series on Nectar of Instruction. The Nectar of Instruction in Sanskrit is known as Upadeśāmṛta. This was compiled by Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. I think most of you know about Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami was at one time serving like a prime minister under a Muslim king. But after he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa Goswami got very attracted to the science of devotion. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him to go to Vrindavan and write volumes of books on the process of devotional service. One book which he wrote is called Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Prabhupada has translated under the name of Nectar of Devotion. Another book which Rupa Goswami wrote is called Sri Upadeśāmṛta, which Prabhupada has published under the name of Nectar of Instruction. Prabhupada called the Nectar of Devotion the law book of devotional service. I was with Prabhupada in Los Angeles in 1971 when he released that book, and Prabhupada showed the book to all the devotees in the temple room, and he said, "This is the law book of the movement and all of you must study it." In this Sri Upadeśāmṛta, Rupa Goswami is giving us valuable instructions how to be successful on the devotional path. In the Sri Upadeśāmṛta, which we are discussing in the morning session, we have information about the greatness of God. But the greatness of God can only be understood, as we discussed in the verse today, if we execute the process of devotional service. Otherwise, God will remain a mystery. So, by following the instructions which Rupa Goswami has given us in Sri Upadeśāmṛta, we will be able to understand God. This Krishna conscious movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. So Srila Rupa Goswami, he was the leader of the 6 great Goswamis. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he left behind his 6 Shastaka slokas consisting of 8 verses. Rupa Goswami has left behind for us Sri Upadeśāmṛta. In all spiritual affairs, our first business obviously is to control the senses. Prabhupada says, advancement in Krishna consciousness depends upon the mentality of the follower. Actually, every follower of Krishna consciousness should become a Goswami. Goswami means controller of the senses. Go means senses, and Swami means master. So don't think that Goswami is only for one who carries a danda. Previously in Soviet Union, our sannyasis were without dandas. But now, our sannyasis in your country will be able to carry dandas. At least we have sent 4 dandas from Mayapur this year. So Rupa Goswami has given us many books. I mentioned to you Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Upadeśāmṛta. Also, he has given us Vidagdha, Madhava and Lalita Madhava. But Sri Upadeśāmṛta, Prabhupada maintains, gives us the fundamental instructions for devotional advancement. I see in this audience some people who may be coming here for the first, second or third time, and some people in the audience may be occasional visitors, not regular visitors. But they should not get scared in hearing the instructions of these verses. The process of devotional service is so powerful, friends, that if we accept it with faith, then what appears to be impossible becomes possible. It is said by Krishnadas Kaviraj, the author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a blind man can see, a lame man can walk, a dumb man can speak, a deaf man can hear. So what appears impossible becomes possible just by taking to the process with faith and conviction. So there are 11 verses in this book called Sri Upadeśāmṛta. I will only be able to cover 3 or 4 verses in the next 4 days of my stay in Leningrad, but I'll continue this series wherever I go in. So we shall start our discussion with text 1. We'll discuss this for about 1 hour and then take on questions, okay? Vācavegam Manasa Krodha Vegam Jiva Vegam Dharapasta Vegam Etam Vegam Yo Vishaheta Vira Sarvam Apimam Prithvim Sa Seshyat Vachvega Manasa Krodha Vegam Jiva Vegam Dharapasta Vegam Ethan Vegam Vishaheta Dhira Sarvam Apimam Prithvim Saseshyat Vachvega Manasa Krodha Vegam Jiva Vegam Dharapasta Vegam Etan Vegam Vishaheta Dhira Sarvam Apimam Prithvim Saseshyat Vachvega Manasa Krodha Vegam Jiva Vegam Dharapasta Vegam Etan Vegam Vishaheta Dhira Sarvam Apimam Prithvim Saseshyat Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurmilitan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadam Tikha Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamlan Shri Gurun Vaishnavanashta Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vidam Tham Sajevam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Nitamshta Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivachadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Prabhupada has written a 13-page purport to this verse. So we will be covering the points that Prabhupada has raised in his purports in our talk. We have already explained to all of you the importance of this great book known as Sri Upadeśāmṛta. In this verse, Rupa Goswami is highlighting the importance of controlling the senses. For example, I'm sure that many of you may be meeting relatives or friends who may be telling you, why do you want to take to this Krishna conscious process? Why don't you go to the Russian Orthodox Church? What is the harm? Why don't you stick to the Baptist path? Why don't you stick to that path? There are so many people today who claim to be following some religious process, but they do not know what is religion. Religion can only be understood if we emphasize controlling the senses. In the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's a very nice dialogue which took place between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. Parikshit Maharaj had heard from Shukadeva Goswami the description of the hellish planets in the 5th canto. And after hearing about the terrible suffering that the living entity will have to undergo for his sinful activities, Parikshit Maharaj wanted to know, why do people engage in sinful activities? Just like, for example, if you know that if you steal something from a store, you're definitely going to be arrested by the police, then what is the value of stealing? Doesn't make sense. In Sanskrit, there is a word called Prayaśchita. Prayaśchita means, in English, atonement. I don't know in Russian what it is. So, atonement technically means people believe will go on sinning, but just as a formality, they will go to the place of worship on Sunday or whichever day it may be. They will apologize to the Lord for the sins that they have committed, and then they will come out and again they will start sinning. But what is the value of atoning if I'm going to come out and start sinning again. Just like if you are taken in front of a judge for a crime. So just like if you go in front of a judge for a crime, and if the judge has accused you once, you again ask him to excuse it the second time, he will not do it. So Parikshit Maharaj said, an elephant goes into the water to have a bath, then as soon as it comes out of the water after having a bath, it sits down in the mud, and again the body becomes dirty. In your country, I think you can only find elephants in the zoo. But in India, you find elephants on the road everywhere. Not everywhere, but in some places. So, if you take the elephant to have a bath in the river, then its body becomes clean, isn't it? But as soon as the elephant steps out of the water on the land, it at once goes and sits down in the mud. So in 1 second, again it becomes dirty. What is the use of people adopting a religious process, going to the church or the temple, and then again they come back and they start to sin again? What is the use? And Parikshit Maharaj said, a tree may get burnt in the fire. So he said that the tree may get burnt in the fire, but as long as the roots of the tree are there below the earth, the root is going to grow again. So Parikshit Maharaj said, unless the root is not taken out from the earth, the tree is going to grow again. So Parikshit Maharaj is saying, unless the sinful desire is taken out from the heart, you are going to not stop sinning. So we have to take the sinful desires out of the heart. The Christians may say, oh, I'm not so bad. On Fridays I do not eat meat. I only eat meat 6 days a week. And the Hindu meat eaters will say, oh, we eat meat but not every day. On Tuesdays and Saturdays I don't eat meat. 5 days a week only the Hindus eat meat, many of them. So the point is that unless the sinful desires are taken out from the heart, the living entity cannot give up sinful tendencies. But real atonement can only be possible if you have real knowledge. For example, show me in how many places of worship is a priest going on the altar every Sunday and saying, come on, stop your professional atonement business. Every Sunday you come, you apologize to God, and the moment you walk out of the church, you light your cigarettes. How many people are saying, stop this business of regular atonement? So therefore, Rupa Goswami is educating us on the importance of sense control, because if we can control the mind and the senses, then you will not have to make a mockery out of religion. So Rupa Goswami is telling us that we must control the mind and the senses, especially one who is making spiritual disciples all over the world. Actually, the importance of sense control applies to everyone, whether it's a disciple or whether it's the spiritual master. So Rupa Goswami has talked about the importance of controlling the tongue or controlling the mind, anger, and the genitals and the belly. Vacha Vegam. Vacha means speech. And related to Vacha is Jiva. Jiva means the use of the tongue for eating purposes. So basically, as we know, the tongue has two principal functions. One is to speak and the other is to eat. If we do not speak about Krishna consciousness, then automatically we will speak about mundane talk. So in the Shastras it is said, the frog, it also makes a noise with its tongue. But the frog, by making a noise from the tongue, just helps the snake to identify where it is located. And in the end, the snake ends up biting the frog. So similarly, if we engage in mundane talk, or talk that is not related to Krishna, then this mundane talk will just distract us from the spiritual goal. In other words, the cruel serpent of time is biting us at every minute. Time I am that destroys everything, Krishna says that. You may be very beautiful today, but time will make sure that the beauty doesn't stay for long. You may be very famous today, but time will make sure that your fame isn't forever. So, just like a black snake bites without discrimination. Usually a snake will bite you if it suspects that you have done something to it. but a black snake will bite you without any reason. So similarly, time is like a black snake. It is taking away everything except for one who uses this time to worship the Lord. So tongue must be used in service to Krishna. Saintly person must be, a person on the spiritual path must be able to control the tongue. This does not mean that the tongue should not be used or it should be artificially locked up. Just like in India, there are a group of so-called transcendentalists who observe monism. Monism means they will not speak for years and years, do everything by writing, and people think this is big tapasya. I remember once in 1976, along with Prabhupada, we had gone to a big festival in Kurukshetra. And one of the highlights of the whole festival was there was one so-called Swami who had not spoken for about 10 years. So everybody who was coming there was first going to see that Swami. But Prabhupada said, this is foolishness. If you have a tongue, you must use it for Krishna, not that you seal the tongue up. So, a sober person must tolerate the urge to speak. This means the natural desire, vegam. Vegam means pushing. So naturally the tongue generally desires to engage in mundane talk, but one who wants to be a spiritual gentleman, a sober person, he must control the urge to speak. So we have plenty to speak. Don't think that, oh, life will become boring if you only have to speak about Krishna. Sometimes devotees get scared when they're told you only have to speak about Krishna. They say, oh, only about Krishna, what will I do with my tongue then? You can use the tongue to vibrate the glories of the Lord by the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Then you can use the tongue to repeat Krishna's instructions. You can talk about the philosophy Krishna is giving you. Just like all of you go out on book distribution. So book distribution is a wonderful opportunity to talk about Krishna's philosophy. There are so many ways how we can present the Bhagavad Gita's philosophy even to the grossest materialists and hold his attention. For example, you can tell them, this book is telling you that there's something within you which never dies. Because everybody wants to be eternal. Nobody wants to die. So you tell him, read this book and you will find out how you cannot die, you may not die. Krishna also tells you in the 3rd chapter how prosperity can be realized. The point that we are making is that there's so many Krishna's teachings can be discussed and taught, and of course his pastimes can be relished amongst devotees. Obviously when you're talking to karmis on the street, you can't talk about Krishna's pastimes because they will not be able to relate to it. But they can certainly relate to Krishna's instructions. And amongst devotees, we can always discuss Krishna Katha, Krishna's teachings and his pastimes. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hayandikara, Yaha Krishna Tahe Ni Maya Adhikara. Where there is Krishna, there is no room for Maya. Just like where there is sunshine, there is no room for darkness. So, if we are always keeping ourselves in Krishna consciousness, then the agents of lust, anger, greed will not be allowed to spoil your spiritual life. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has said that our material identification means thinking I am this body. It creates 3 types of demands. One is the urge to speak. The other is the urge of the mind. And the third is the demands of the body. So as long as you have this material identification, you will constantly have the urge to speak, the demands of the mind and the demands of the body. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati states that when a living entity becomes a victim of these 3 influences, then his whole life becomes inauspicious. And one who practices to abstain from these urges is called in the Sanskrit language as a tapasvi. By being a tapasvi, we can resist the temptation of Maya. Otherwise, we will become a victim of the different sense desires and waste our valuable human life. A very famous Vaishnava poet, Narottam Das Thakur, has said, Hari Hari Befle Janma Gunaino, Manusya Janma Paya, Radha Krishna Bhajya Janya Shunya Pesha Khaino. Having obtained this human form of body and not having worshipped Radha Krishna, I have been drinking poison uselessly. So, the correct utilization of human form is through the medium of controlling the senses. We also have to control the mind. You may have noticed that in the Bhagavad Gita, again and again and again, Krishna is making this one point: please control the because unless you control the you can't control the other senses. Now you may argue that to control the mind is very difficult. Arjuna had also presented this argument. Arjuna said, my dear Lord, you say control the mind, but to me controlling the mind is more difficult than controlling the wind. So we have to try to situate the mind correctly. The agitation of the flickering mind is divided into two parts. One is called avirodha priti. Avirodha priti means unrestricted attachment. That means unlimited attachment. The other is known as virodha yukta krodha. This means anger after frustration. As you may know, nobody becomes angry if you give him what he wants. When does the child become angry and start crying? The child will become angry and start crying only when the mother doesn't give the child what he wants. As long as the mother is giving the child all the toys it wants, the child will smile. So similarly, as long as the mind can get its quota of sense enjoyment, it is smiling. But when the mind cannot get its quota of sense enjoyment, that's when they become angry. So, the mind, it becomes angry after frustration, and also the mind has unlimited attachments. And when these attachments cannot be realized, then the mind becomes agitated. The mind wants to have a big house, the latest Moscow car, a nice wife, a nice house, everything nice. So many unrestricted desires are there in the mind. And the mind is just thinking, how can I realize all these desires? So, we have to understand that the mind has to be controlled. The mind has one other important business: accepting and rejecting. Today you like someone, tomorrow you hate that person. Today you're the best of friends, tomorrow you're the best of enemies. Today you buy something new, you like it, tomorrow you want to throw it out. Therefore Arjuna says, Chanchala himana Kṛṣṇa. Chanchal means very fickle. You tell the child, okay, now sit down. The child will not sit down. In 1 minute it will get up and start running here, there, everywhere. So similarly you tell the mind, sit down. But the mind says, no, it will start running here, there. Therefore you cannot tell the mind to sit down. So all these so-called yogis who say, okay, we will go into meditation, they're just cheating themselves and cheating you. Because the mind cannot be idle. Just by closing your eyes, you cannot give up your sense gratification desires. Therefore all these so-called yogis who say, meditate or go to a secluded place to meditate, they're just cheating themselves. Therefore we have Krishna's instruction on this point which comes to our rescue. That is, man mana bhava mad bhakto madhya man namaskuru. Always think of me, bow down to me. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj has given us 9 processes for devotional service. We will discuss in length tomorrow because on Lord Nrsimhadev's birthday, as I said, tomorrow all day we will talk about Lord Nrsimhadev and Prahlad Maharaj's teachings. Prahlad Maharaj, in presenting the 9-fold process, says, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Vishnu Smarana means remember. So Vishnu Smaranam, remembering the Lord, is very important because unless we remember the Lord, how will you control the mind? Control of the mind becomes easier if Shravanam, Kirtanam has been carefully executed. Because through the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, we chant and hear the glories of the Lord. And if you have heard the glories of the Lord attentively, you will definitely remember the Lord also. I'll give you a mundane example to illustrate this point. Suppose sometimes you get a letter from home, from your mother, let's say from your village or something, or your friend. You get a letter from your friend, and the friend talks about, the old friendship, how you two grew up together. So when you read that letter, don't you start remembering everything about that friend? So just like that, if you attentively hear about Krishna, then you'll also remember Krishna. And then the mind will automatically come in control. But if you have not chanted properly, then how can you control the mind? Many times all over the world, devotees come and say, Swamiji, Guruji, the mind is troubling, what to do, what to do. So this is the solution, attentive chanting. Once I was with Prabhupada in Montreal, Canada in 1968. At that time I was a new devotee. So I told Prabhupada, my mind is troubling me. So Prabhupada said, don't worry, my mind is also troubling me. Just chant Hare Krishna properly, everything will be okay. So if we attentively chant Hare Krishna, then you can make the mind your friend. When the mind is trying to distract you from the spiritual path, the mind is to be considered to be your enemy. And when the mind is trying to help you on the spiritual path, then the mind is considered to be your friend. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna told Krishna, he said, Krishna, how is it that in spite of knowing what is right and what is wrong, one is still forcibly attracted towards sinful activities? So Krishna said, Kama esa krodha esa raja gun samudbhavaha. It is lust only, the eternal enemy of the living entity, which is always burning like fire and which can never be stopped. Just like fire, sometimes fire starts, you can't put off that fire easily, isn't it? No. Just like fire when it starts in the forest fire cannot be put off easily. So similarly, that is the nature of this lust. Lust cannot be controlled easily. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, where is this lust? Where can you catch this thief? Just like, suppose there's a thief hiding in our compound. And if somebody tells you, oh, the thief is hiding in that hut over there, then you know where to catch him. So Krishna says, lust is hiding behind the mind, the intelligence, and the senses. Therefore, we must train the mind. We must train the mind how to be brought under control. So, we don't believe in just talking theory, we also believe in practice. Because you may say, it's very easy to talk about mind control, but practically to control the mind, it is so difficult. So we will give you some practical examples how to make the mind your friend. Of course, in your temple here, you only have Gaurnitai deities. But in our big temples which have Radha Krishna deities, every day they change the dress of these Radha Krishna deities. Satyaraj, you change the dress of these deities every day also? Same dress or new dress every day? So every day you just meditate on the dress that the deities were wearing. Today the deities had a red dress or a green dress. Meditate what garland the deities had, what color the flowers were, how big was the garland. Does anyone remember the color of the dress that the deities are wearing today? What color dress are the deities wearing today? But very soon when you have big Radha Krishna deities, then you will have more to meditate on. Then you can meditate on the desires of the Lord. What is the principal desire of the Lord? Does anyone in this room know that? Who knows what is the principal desire of the Lord? To surrender to Krishna, because by surrendering to Krishna, we will go back to Krishna. We are all like the lost children of Krishna. Just like when the children leave home and go away at a young age, the parents get worried. Of course, in Kali Yuga, things are so bad, the parents don't care. But Krishna cares. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on one occasion was talking to Haridas Thakur. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Haridas, I am very, very sad today. Go Brahmane Hinsa Kare Mahadurachara. Haridas, when I am thinking about the gross materialists who have no respect for the Vedic culture and the Brahmins, my heart is lamenting. How will these lectures be saved? So Haridas said, Prabhu, chinta na kariya. My dear Lord, please do not worry. This is the business of the disciple, to relieve the anxiety of the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. Haridas said, Ha Ram, nama kahe balabhase. That is by chanting the names of Krishna, these conditioned souls will be saved. So this is another way to control the mind. Always think how you can reduce the headache that Krishna has. Krishna's anxiety is all these people are rotting in the material world and engaged in sinful activities. Therefore the devotees, by engaging in this activity of book distribution, Harinam, Prasad distribution, street preaching are working towards relieving the anxiety of the Lord. So we should, just like Prahlad Maharaj. What did Prahlad Maharaj say? He said, So chetato vimukasa chetas indriyartha maya sukhaya bharam udvato vimuram. My dear Lord, when I'm looking at these materialists who are trying to convert a position of distress to a position of comfort, my heart is lamenting. So therefore, we should be thinking always, how can we save these conditioned souls in this country? Just like in your country, I think the total population is about 270 million. And how many are chanting Hare Krishna? Maybe few thousand. And how many are not chanting Hare Krishna? Nearly 99.9% of the population. You may say, oh, now Krishna consciousness is really booming. See, in Leningrad we have a temple room, the whole temple room is full. So Krishna consciousness is going very nicely. But you have to think, how many people are still not chanting Hare Krishna in Leningrad? What is Leningrad's population? 7 million? So there are at least 5 million people in this city who are not chanting Hare Krishna. So you have to think, how can I give these 5 million people Krishna consciousness? And if you're always thinking, how can I give these 5 million people Krishna consciousness, then there'll be no time for Maya. Because then your mind will just be worried, how can I save these 5 million people? Otherwise, the mind will run in the traditional areas of weakness. And that is sex desire and money. This was Hiranyakashipu's weakness. Hiranyakashipu only had 2 weaknesses, woman and money. But unfortunately, that is the weakness of everyone in every conditioned soul. Because every conditioned soul is thinking, without these 2 things, how can I be happy? He doesn't understand that even in the animal form of life, the so-called sexual pleasure is to be experienced. Prabhupada used to say the pigeons have relationship 100 times a day, and they are pure vegetarians. And the monkeys have this relationship 10-20 times a day, and they are also pure vegetarians. So just being a vegetarian is no big achievement. But if you can be a vegetarian and eat Krishna Prasad and control your senses, then it is some achievement. So this was another way of controlling the mind, always thinking about Krishna's desires. And then you have so many pastimes of Krishna. Each of these pastimes is so amazing. In your country, do the children read these Superman comics? In every country of the world, including India, the children, they all read Superman. Superman flies from one mountain to another. He does so many miracles. Anyway, so everybody likes to read about some heroic work done by somebody. So who can be a bigger hero than Krishna? Krishna, right from his birth, was doing such activities which nobody can do. When he was just a young baby, one day he was crawling in the courtyard and he pulled down 2 huge trees. When he opened his mouth to his mother, he showed the whole universe. He showed the whole universe, his Virat Roop form to Arjuna in the battle of Kurukshetra. There's so many stories of Krishna. Remember these different stories. So this is another way, practical way to control the mind. Then what? Meditate on the service that you are doing. Everybody has some service. You may be a book distributor. Then you should meditate, how can I distribute more books? There is always room for improvement. If you're a cook, you can meditate how to cook better. But I don't think Divya Leela can meditate how to cook better, because her cooking is already out of this world. But all of you, if you are cooks, you can meditate how to cook better. If your service is to decorate, do deity worship, then you can meditate how to dress the deities better. If your service is to do gardening in this temple, then you can meditate how can I produce very nice flowers which I can offer as garlands to Prabhupada and Krishna every day. And every devotee can meditate how can he improve his Vaishnava dealings with the other Vaishnavas. So by controlling the mind in this way, you will not let your enemy, Mr. Illusion, disturb your spiritual life. It doesn't mean in Krishna consciousness anger has no place, but anger must be correctly used. Just like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that Jagai and Madai had attacked Lord Nityananda, didn't Chaitanya Mahaprabhu get very angry? He came, he was ready to kill Jagai and Madai. But then Lord Nityananda stopped him and said, please don't, this is typical of the age of Kali, where everyone has fallen. Then by the mercy of Nityananda, Jagai and Madai became great devotees of the Lord. So, as I told all of you, Generally, we get angry when we do not get what we want, and we become angry because of too many material attachments that are in our mind. And when you cannot get those desires fulfilled, you are furious. So we should never be angry because of some personal inconvenience. But if you're angry because Krishna is being insulted, or some advanced Vaishnava is being insulted, or somebody is stopping you from doing book distribution in Harinam, Udarapasta. Udarapasta means belly and genitals. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has said that the tongue, the belly, and the genitals are all in a straight line. So, if the tongue is in control, then the belly will also be in control. And if the belly is in control, the genitals will also be in control. Just like any medical doctor will tell you, most diseases that people have these days are due to wrong eating habits and overeating. If you eat incorrectly, and if you eat wrong items, naturally you will get diseased. Krishna says the perfect yogi is one who does not eat too much or too little, who does not sleep too much or too little. Of course, when a new bhakta joins our movement, everywhere in the world we encourage him to get attached to prasad. We stuff him with so much prasad that he gets more attached to prasad than to Krishna. But they get so attached to prasad that they meditate, oh, if I leave the temple and go home, where am I going to get this nice prasad? Therefore, Prabhupada said, in Kali Yuga, you win people through the belly by prasad distribution. So, if the tongue, if one has the right eating habits and one does not eat too much or too little, then he will be able to control sex desires and other desires. So one who can control the senses is known as a Goswāmī, and one who cannot control the senses is known as Godasa or Adanta Go. So before we eat prasad, every day we say this very nice prayer by Thakur Bhaktivinoda Śrīla Vidyaja. So in this prayer, we are acknowledging that the tongue is very voracious animal. The senses are a path of ignorance leading to death. So Krishna has sent us this nice prasadam to conquer the tongue. So some or the other we must get attached to Krishna prasad. Not vegetarian food, but Krishna prasad. Prasad means food which is mixed with the saliva of the Lord. So when you eat food stuff that is mixed with the saliva of the Lord, the mind and the senses get purified. And with purified mind and intelligence, you can understand things properly. You can understand the difference between asat and sat, between real and false. Just like now it is getting dark, so after 1 or 2 hours you won't be able to see things properly. But when you put the electricity on, then you can see things properly. So with impure senses, you cannot understand anything. When a man is under the influence of vodka, he doesn't know who he is. But when the influence goes away, then he knows who he is. So prasad has a capacity to purify our impure senses. But don't think that you will only take prasad and not do Shravanam Kirtanam. Along with prasad, you also need Shravanam Kirtanam. Then you'll become spiritually healthy, wealthy, and wise. In material life, everybody has one principle. He wants to have a healthy body. Nobody likes to fall sick. I understand in your country, medicine is free, isn't it? When you go to a hospital, it is free or you have to pay. Even if medicine is free, the pain is not free. The government may give you free medicine, but it does not pay you for the pain. So everybody wants 3 things in life. He wants to have a healthy body and he wants to be wealthy. Doesn't matter which country you go, your capitalist country or communist country, everybody likes money. They say in English, money is sweeter than honey. And everybody wants to be wise. Everybody wants to be recognized in society. Oh, look at this man, he's a big intellectual. Even the taxi driver wants to be known as an intellectual. If you want to be healthy, wealthy, and wise in spiritual life, then Shravanam, this verse will make you spiritually healthy. If you eat right prasad, you don't overeat, then your body will automatically be healthy. And if you control your senses, then you will automatically become spiritually rich. And if you don't control your senses, you'll be spiritually bankrupt. And if you control your senses, you'll automatically be spiritually wise. Otherwise, if you don't control the senses, you'll be spiritually foolish. So if you follow this verse of the Upadeśāmṛta, then you will be spiritually healthy, wealthy, and wise. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Is there any difference between Jiva and Atma? And if there is no any difference, what is a spiritual body? How it looks?
Jivatma, Atma is the same thing. Spiritual body means you'll have a body which may look like this, but it doesn't get old, it doesn't get diseased, it doesn't get wrinkled.
Is there any difference between different Jivatmas, and what is the difference?
Atma is Atma. Everyone has different desires. We're all individuals. The nature of Jivatma is eternal. It does not take birth, it does not die. It just goes from one body to another body. No, the Shastras say the Atma is 1/10,000 of the tip of your hair, and that is for Russian Atma, Indian Atma, American Atma, all Atma is same.
How Krishna can recognize if we all looks like the same? There is no difference between the Jivas. How Krishna can recognize this one Jiva, this another? How can we have a different relationship with Krishna if we are all?
But our bodies look different. Our bodies are different.
Spiritually.
Naturally, we are all Atmas, but the body looks different. No, the Atma is covered by a dress all the time. So our bodies look different. You cannot understand God with your material senses. How do you think Lord Yamraj is keeping an account of every activity that everybody does? 40 years ago in your country, some organization, some people knew what everyone in this country was doing. If some organization can keep a track of everyone in this country, you think Krishna can't keep Lord Yamraj can't keep a track of every breath of everyone? Sure he can.
Please tell about your acceptance sannyasa, and what is the rules for accepting sannyasa now?
Rule for accepting sannyas? You want to take sannyas? You have to wait till you're 50 years of age now before you can get sannyas. Have you heard of Rajneesh in Leningrad? Rajneesh is well known everywhere, huh? Anyway, he was God, but now that God has died, you know that. Anyway, Rajneesh also used to use the word sannyas. But his sannyas and sannyasinis were allowed to mix freely, have drugs, cigarettes, everything. All his male disciples, he used to call them sannyas, and women sannyasini. But our sannyas is not like Rajneesh sannyas. It is very strict. So the GVC body has now decided not to give sannyas to your people at young age. So unless one is 40 or 50 years of age, he cannot even be considered now. Unless somebody has been a very exceptional devotee for 15, 20 years.
Can the man who is not in Krishna consciousness develop qualities?
These qualities.
These qualities, yeah. And can he teach disciples?
If a man is not Krishna conscious, he cannot control his senses. How can you control your senses until you have positive engagement for the senses? So a person who is not Krishna conscious cannot have any good qualities. And how can you make disciples? Of course you can make disciples because everybody these days believes in the cheating business. Bhakti Siddhanta Ji used to say, this is world of cheaters and the cheated. Disciple is ready to cheat Guru, Guru is ready to cheat disciple. People want a Guru, but they want a Guru who will not tell them anything. There was one very famous Swami. He had come to see me in Vrindavan temple about 5 months ago. This Swami lives in Vrindavan. So he was telling me, Swami Gopal Krishna Maharaj, I have this man as my disciple. People. He said, they're all my disciples. So I told him, Swamiji, what rules are you giving your disciples to follow? Are they chanting 16 rounds, following 4 regulative principles, etc.? He said, no. So I said, then how are they your disciples? So Prabhupada taught us not to make cheap disciples.
It is said that senses cannot be controlled by a mechanical way. But in the first stage of bhakti, sadhana bhakti, we must to force our senses do something. It is looks like mechanic.
We have to force just like when you are sick. In order to recover from your disease, you have to take the medicine and the diet. So similarly, you have to take the medicine of controlling the senses and chanting Hare Krishna in the initial stages. This is defined by Rupa Goswami as the process of Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti means rules and regulations. And if you follow the rules and regulations, then in the end you get to Raghunuga Bhakti, spontaneous devotional service. Just like a fish does not want to live out of water, you will then reach a stage where you don't want to be without bhakti for 1 second. So the rules and regulations are necessary. Sometimes in the Western countries, I don't know if in your country, but in the Western countries and in India, people say, oh, why do you need rules and regulations for God? But without rules and regulations, you can't even walk on the road. You may want to walk naked on the road, but the police will stop you. So rules and regulations are there for everything. Even to understand God, you have rules and regulations. But the difference is, when you follow these spiritual rules and regulations, you get pleasure. But when you follow these material rules and regulations, you feel pain. Because spiritual life is sweet. Just like a sugar cane. You know sugar cane? What do you say, sugar cane?
Trasnik.
Trasnik. Just like if you have a trasnik, doesn't matter where you bite on the trasnik, it is going to be sweet. You bite on the bottom, in the middle, or in the end, the trasnik is going to be always sweet. So spiritual life is always sweet. So these rules and regulations are simply what they call burden of love. Serving Krishna is burden of love. Just like our devotees go out on the streets for 12 hours a day and do book distribution. Some karmi outsider may think, oh, they're doing book distribution because they're getting some commission. This is their job. But devotees are doing it out of love. Just like, and there's a material example, a mother who is bringing up a young child. The young child may pass stool and urine 10 times in the night, but the mother just considers this as a burden of love. A Vedic mother doesn't throw the child out because the child has passed stool and urine 10 times. So similarly, for the devotee, to go through the pain of serving Krishna is simply a burden of love. Once Prabhupada was coming down the New York building, so devotees were telling Prabhupada, Prabhupada, now you're not well, you please go and rest in the Gita Nagari farm. But Prabhupada said, please, don't take away my privilege to struggle for Krishna.
It is said that there is a causeless mercy of the Lord, and is there any caused mercy of the Lord? And what is the difference?
Causeless means that the devotee is always thinking that he's not entitled to anything. And whatever happens, it is due to the causeless mercy of the spiritual master and Krishna. Cause means I have worked 8 hours a day, so I must get 20 rubles salary. But causeless means without any reason. So suppose the devotee goes out and he distributes 100 books in one day. So he doesn't say, I distributed 100 books because I learned a nice new mantra. I learned a new trick how to stop the people. He doesn't take credit for himself. He gives all credit to Guru and Krishna. He says, oh, did the causeless mercy of Krishna and Guru, I was able to do that. Okay?
What does it mean to accept spiritual master?
It means to agree to follow the spiritual master's instructions. You should not get initiated if you're not ready to follow his instructions. And what is the instruction? Give up Maya and accept Krishna. And to give up Maya, you have to chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regulative principles, etc. That's all. It's not difficult. It's easy. It is more difficult to be in Maya than to be in Krishna consciousness. People don't understand how difficult it is to be in Maya. Once you come to Krishna consciousness, everything becomes so easy. In the mature world, any friends you make, they will only think, how can they get something out of you? And when they cannot get something out of you, they won't even come to see Sergai. I said they won't even come to see Sergai because everyone's name here is Sergai. No? In living in the material world, it's very hard to control the senses. And then if you want to fulfill all your material desires, then you have to work like an ass to make rubles by hook or crook. Somehow or the other, you must get it done. Some of the other, the karmis say, I must make money. Okay? Any more vapros? So you have 2 questions. First question is, why did we leave the spiritual world? Second question is, why is the human population going up? Am I right?
You want to ask, why did we left spiritual world?
Okay. So you left the spiritual world because you became envious of God. In the spiritual world, only Krishna is the enjoyer. So if you don't want to see Krishna as the enjoyer, then you have to get out. So we became, because of our material desires to enjoy like Krishna, Krishna says, okay, then go to the material world. Just like the father tells the son, stop it, stop it, stop it. But the son still says, no, 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 I want it. Then finally he says, okay, I will give you a nice Prabhupada story on this point. I want to, and after that I will answer part 2 of your question and then end the discussion today. If you have any more questions, keep it for tomorrow. So Prabhupada had gone with his son once to visit a friend of his. So on that table, there was a table fan. So Prabhupada's son, he was always trying to put his finger inside the blades of the fan. So every time he would lift his hand to put it inside the fan, Prabhupada would pull it back. So it happened like that few times. Finally, Prabhupada's friend told Prabhupada, let him put his hand inside. So he put his hand inside. And with the blade of the fan, it hit the hand very hard. Then he started crying. So then Prabhupada told him, okay, put the hand out again. He said, no, no, no. So this is how we work in the, we have come from the spiritual world. But now having come to the material world, you know, there is no happiness. Just like in Eastern Europe, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, they had communism. Now they've thrown out communism and they're trying to get capitalism. But that is not going to make people happy. Doesn't matter whether you have socialism, communism, capitalism or any ism. The basic miseries of life cannot be corrected. So now that we have come from the spiritual world here, we have seen there is no happiness. Okay, you understand? That was now part 2 of your question. His question is, why is the human population increasing? Now suppose in, let's say, what do you have in Russia? The grade system, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in school? Okay. So suppose you have grade 8, okay? In grade 8, there are 50 students. Now suppose 10 students have failed the exam and 40 students have passed. From the old class and another 50 people from the new class that is coming up from grade below it. So the population of grade 9 will be more. You understand? It has some people who failed from last year and some people from the lower class that have come up. So human population is increasing because many human beings are failing the exam. And from lower form of life, they are coming up to human form. Okay? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,